Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. Israel's strike on Doha sent shockwaves through the region. The attack, reportedly aimed at Hamas's negotiating team, came just as Gaza ceasefire talks were underway. U.S. President Trump said he was very unhappy about the strike, calling it poorly timed and diplomatically risky. He also reportedly pressed Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to promise there'd be no further attacks on Doha. Qatar's prime minister warned the strike was a flagrant violation of its sovereignty and called for regional action.
Netanyahu
himself stated that he will reshape the Middle East. Does this message imply that he intends to reshape the Gulf as well? We believe that today we have reached a pivotal moment. There must be a response from the entire region to such barbaric actions.
The condemnation was swift. Gulf states warned that Qatar's security is inseparable from their own, while Turkey's President Erdogan accused Israel of trying to deepen the conflict in Gaza. The UN Security Council convened an emergency session and issued a rare unanimous statement condemning the strike on Doha. Meanwhile, Netanyahu ordered the evacuation of Gaza City as part of his plan to occupy the Palestinian territory. Has Israel's latest escalation pushed the region to a breaking point, and will it lead to Tel Aviv's further regional and global isolation? For more, joining me now from Doha is Sultan Barakat. He's a professor of public policy at Hamad bin Khalifa University and senior associate fellow at RUSI. From Tel Aviv, Arik Rudnitsky, a project manager for Moshe Dayan Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Tel Aviv University, and from Istanbul, Hazar Vural, assistant professor at Istanbul Aydin University. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining me. A very important geopolitical incident in the very near past, obviously Israel's strike in Doha aimed at the Hamas negotiating team over there. I want to start with you, Sultan. What are your thoughts about this attack, and what were the reverberations inside of Qatar?
Obviously, it was a blatant violation of the sovereignty of the state of Qatar. And as you know, by now, Qatar has taken the issue to the United Nations Security Council, and there has been a condemnation approved by all states, including the United States. Now, the issues I think Qatar has with this, aside from the violation of sovereignty and the arrogance that led them to undertake an air raid into a civilian area in the capital, is the fact that the Israelis were actively engaged in negotiations with Hamas. Only a few days before the air raid, their representatives were hosted in Doha, and they were part of the deliberation around the latest proposal that was presented by the Americans. These proposals were left with the Hamas representatives to consider, and then Israel decided to take them out. So this hits at the heart of the diplomatic norms and the practice of mediation. In mediation, the expectation is that you seek mediation of a third party, and you try and make sure that the environment is as safe and secure for all sides to come to talk to each other. And you do not attempt at any stage really to undermine the safety of the environment that you're hosted in. And of course, it was seen as a betrayal, because this process was not only limited to the 7th of October and the days after. As you know, Doha has been mediating between Israel and Hamas for many years, starting possibly from 2008, and have led to a lot of successful reduction in violence between the two sides, and many exchanges of hostages and prisoners and so on. And in fact, the only success that Netanyahu has achieved so far in terms of release of captives has been achieved via Doha as a result of the mediation.
Arik, Sultan makes some very logical points. He's saying this was a negotiating team. They should be off limits. Obviously, probably the boldest move by Netanyahu up till now. What was he trying to get out of this?
I think that the assault in Doha, or the attempt to eliminate the Hamas leadership, is actually the outcome of two conflicted approaches within Israel. One approach says that the ultimate goal of the war is to eliminate the Hamas, full destruction of Hamas, and the other one said that the top priority of Israel actually is to bring back the hostages. Now the problem is that now, when obviously the immediate goal and there's the long-term goals, or the immediate effect or long-term effect. Now, the immediate effect is that, okay, we can understand to some extent that Israel would put the goal to eliminate Hamas leadership. But if you look to the long-term, through the long-term lens, actually, and Israel needs the mediation of Hamas, as the professor said just before, then this raises significant question marks about the timing of this operation. Now, it is one thing to take down leaders of Hamas in Tehran, for example. Now, Iran is an enemy state defined by the Israeli government to Israel. Qatar isn't. The case of Qatar is totally different. Now, if Israel actually wishes to bring an end to this war and to achieve the top priority goal, which is release all the hostages and end the war, by the way, this is the demand posed by the two-thirds of the Israeli public, according to the latest poll that was released last week by the Israel Democracy Institute. Now, 65% of the Israeli public says that the ultimate goal now should be the end of the war and bring back the hostages and full withdrawal of all IDF forces from the Gaza Strait. Now, from this point of view, the assault in Doha actually caught everyone by surprise. And even if, let's assume, even if the assault was successful, of course, from the Israeli point of view, by eliminating the Hamas leadership, the question is, what next? With whom are you going to hold negotiations in order to release all the hostages and to fulfill your ultimate goal of the war? This is the question right now.
I think that's a great question. What's next? And Hazar, I mean, what's next for Israel is one question, but I think also important, what's next for the international community? I mean, the United Nations Security Council came together, and I mean, it's been a while since they've reached a unanimous decision, but they reached a unanimous decision condemning this attack. I mean, but condemnation doesn't seem to be getting any type of actionable advancement in stopping this. So what's next for the international community?
That is the most important point, I think, because condemnations are not working. We understand it very well since 23 months. Actually, one volunteer from the ship of Madeleine asks this question in an interview. She said that, how can we leave such kind of future that Israel created? This is the question for 192 states except Israel. So bombing or striking the negotiation team or the mediators, how can you give place to this in international immunity of the sides or the mediation issues? So we cannot understand how this will work in the end. But what can be the next move, if you will ask about it? Every state can wait such kind of things, especially in the Middle East, or we can say that right now in the Gulf, nobody is not feeling secure, because we know that since so many years, the Gulf states are taking defense industry products from United States, and most of them are good allies of Washington. So if the Washington guns or arsenal is not protecting them, if the bases of United States are not helping them, how can now they can be sure about their own security? We were criticizing them about maybe they are not supporting a lot the Palestinian case in the past, but right now it's a little bit shock for them, because I think they are not waiting this in the middle of the residential area next to such kind of embassies or the houses. So this is the most important part. How can we live in such kind of future that Israel created?
So Sultan, up till a week ago, when we look at Israel's strikes, you have Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Yemen. The list goes on. But generally, when you look at these countries, diplomatically, we can call them isolated. Qatar's not like that. Qatar's a country. The perception is that they're very advanced diplomatically. They have good relations with the region, a U.S. ally, an ally of many countries, and hosts a lot of diplomatic breakthroughs in the past as well, hosting Afghan migrants at the time and refugees. So a country that's been praised by the United Nations as well. Was this a message by Israel, you think, for the broader region? Do not have relations with Hamas, or you could be on the table, you could be next?
I don't think it's a message, really. I think it's the result of the Israeli Prime Minister with his extreme government being drunk at the moment on power. These people have got away with murder, literally, for obviously for many decades, but over the last 2 years specifically, the genocide that's been undertaken in Gaza, the way he managed to get away with having these 5,000 plus bomblets hitting Lebanon, which was very similar to the 9/11 type arrangements, the way he got away with his attacks on Iran, the way he managed to assassinate a number of political leaders of Hamas with whom he was still negotiating, those that were killed in Lebanon, then Hania as he was killed in Tehran. The place where he's killed does not matter. What matters is the actual killing and the fact, the principle that you need a second side, another side, a parallel side in order to negotiate. The Israeli government clearly has no intention and has not really engaged in any mediation in good faith at all. So what it does represent to the region, it shows the region and now it shows the world. And you can see from the unanimous agreement of the Security Council, who, by the way, could not agree even on criticizing the genocide. They agreed on condemning the attack against Qatar, partly because Qatar, as you say, enjoys very good relations, but partly because Israel has increasingly becoming a pariah state. It is acting as if it's an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Middle East who can only rely on power, who only understands violence. And they don't seem to comprehend the mere fact that violence will only generate violence. Power can only be met by violence. And this pattern, now by extending the circle of their domination, of their wanting to force violence as a solution around the region, to the Gulf region, I think is really problematic. And I agree with my colleague who spoke from Istanbul. The Qataris and the Gulf countries have a real question to address. How was Israel able to cross all this distance and hit Qatar without anyone noticing it? And particularly, what was the role of the Americans in this? Because we all know that there are American forces all over the Middle East, starting from collaboration with the Turkish forces of NATO in Turkey, Syria. They're present in Jordan, in Iraq, in Saudi, in other Gulf countries, and it's impossible that none of them was able to spot 10 plus fighter jets heading all the way from Israel to Qatar and having to refuel at least once in order to make the full cycle. So there are a lot of other issues to address, but I think for now, the big issues that people need to face up to, particularly in Israel, is the direct threat to the lives of the captives with Hamas. It is clear, and I think the people of Israel should really read, no hesitation, just read it as it is. The prime minister, who we all know is a pathological liar, he is not interested in any release of the hostages in any form. In fact, you probably see them as a threat. He'd rather them die. And when in the Security Council of the U.S. referred to them as being murdered, they were not murdered by Hamas. Majority have been killed by Israeli attacks on Gaza. So he clearly does not want that to be resolved this way. And I think the question needs to go back to him and to the Israeli cabinet to say, what is it you want exactly? He wants to eliminate Hamas. He understands that Hamas is an ideology. He can kill as many people as he wishes, and then there will be more people created very soon. And that has been the pattern for years. He's not going to end it without ending the occupation. And of course, releasing the captives clearly is not a priority for him because he just gambled with their lives big way.
Arik, a very nuanced criticism by Sultan, placing the blame more on the government and especially Netanyahu than rather a blanket blame over the Israeli state. I want to couple that with a comment you just made in the previous answer. 65% of Israelis want to see action towards peace. So, Arik, what is the Israeli public doing? I mean, there seems to be declining, obviously, popularity of Netanyahu. Could there be early elections? Could Netanyahu be removed? And also, I want to couple this with a second question to you. If there would have been an alternative government in place, for example, a Lapid or a Bennett or a Gantz-led government, October 8th, would there have been a different action taken over the past year and a half?
I will answer you first the second question. Now, since I adhere to the historical discipline, I cannot answer a what-if answer question. This is a big question. I can only assume that should another government was in power, Israel's initial reaction, at least, was no different than the one that actually the current government has taken. Now, Israel, after all, is a democratic regime. And the reason that Netanyahu stays in power, that he enjoys a parliamentary majority. This is how the rules of the game in Israel are being actually taking place up to the present. Of course, there's a growing criticism from large segments in the Israeli society. But this is, I think, the outcome of the fact that there is not a political or effective political opposition. So the actual opposition moved to the street. Now, this is what we see here, but only approximately weekly demonstrations calling for putting an end to the war. And of course, the goal is to bring back the hostages. Now, the thing is that what best serves the interest of Israel? Does Israel want to be the bad guy of this neighborhood, of the Middle East? Or are there any, I would say, other means that would help promote Israel's goals, meaning the elimination of Hamas, at least politically? Of course, I agree that you cannot totally eliminate ideological worldview. Of course, while we're in the midst of the longest and difficult war in the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and this is also a conflict that Israel, it is not for the interest of Israel to the conflict to get some other branches. Israel had a direct war with Iran, with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Does Israel want to burn its bridges to the Gulf? I don't think so. And from this respect, I agree with the professor from Doha that the Gulf states feel endangered right now, and this is top priority for Israel to restore her relations with the Gulf states, some of whom have signed peace or normalization agreements with Israel. I think that as of now, the Netanyahu government remains in power. The next parliamentary election should take place in a year from now, and we see that preparations on the political level, on the popular level, in anticipation for these elections. I think and I hope that by then the war would be over for Israel's own interests, both politically, economically, humanitarian reasons from the Israel point of view. Of course, let alone the interest of the people of Gaza to stop the suffering of what is going in Gaza.
Mm-hmm. So, Hazar, the strike on Qatar obviously redrew the lines of the capacity or the limits of what Israel's willing to militarily engage. Now, those still on the other side of that line, Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, UAE, when they're looking at this Qatar strike, what are they thinking? I mean, especially I want you to speak about the Turks because I know this has been discussed a lot lately. Would Israel strike Turkey? What would Turkey do to return if that happened? And I feel like there's this underlying narrative that's trying to be pushed that putting these two countries at odds with each other beyond diplomatically. Do you feel that, and what would happen in that scenario?
Okay, before skipping to this, I should say that Israel is trying to give shape to the whole region, and they are not counting any norms, any values, humanitarian issues, or human lives. So when they are doing this with the full support of Washington and most of the time London. So we cannot say that Israel is just composed by Israel. It's not 9 million people or what they have in their hands. It's much more than that. And when we think about the other regional actors, as you say, from Cairo to Ankara or the rest, of course, in their mind, they want to give shape to all of them. But I should speak about, of course, Ankara. We are smiling to this topic because we know that Israel is just understand from the power. So as we said, condemnations are not on the table. It's not working. So if you are independent enough, if you are strong enough, if your national defense industry is much more higher than the rest of the region, it means that you have an immunity. You are strong enough, then Israel cannot hit you because it's just a, unfortunately, power game. We cannot speak about international law since so many years when it comes to Israel because they are doing a state terror and they are not giving any answers or respond in the courts. We are still waiting. Of course, it will take a lot of time, lots of years about the result of the court. But we can say that what they are trying to do, we should focus on this. Tel Aviv is trying to give shape to every actor. Rather, you should be with us, you should obey us, or we can hit you. But I should repeat, not all of the actors can be hit. I'm not just saying that we are NATO members and we have Article 5. Turkey understands very well that in this conjuncture, you can just stand on your feet and you can just rely on yourself, your power. And what we are trying to do, of course, like the other regional actors, we are trying to increase our power and especially the national defense industry products. It is so important we observe it in this region.
Sultan, I want to bring the U.S. into this conversation as well. Trump condemning the attack, saying he wasn't very happy with it. Obviously, there seems to be an American fingerprint on what happened in Qatar. How do you view his reputation right now as the president of the United States in the GCC? I mean, Qatar an ally, the UAE an ally, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain. I mean, many of these countries looking to the U.S. for security, but obviously the U.S. asleep at the wheel while this strike happened in Qatar.
Well, I think the public position of all the Gulf countries is that they still value the relationship with the U.S. and that they are going to push ahead with their security arrangement with the U.S. But privately, they can't but suspect what has happened and what role the U.S. has played in it. And I think it's going to be internally and privately, it's a watershed moment. It's similar to the day when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait under the watch of the United States and everybody else. And that has got the Gulf countries to rework, really recalculate their position pretty much totally. The same, I think, will happen this time. What we fear is that Trump, and maybe this is one of the reasons why he was late in declaring a response to the Israeli attack, is that he maybe was waiting to see the results. Had Israel killed the Hamas leaders, all of them in one go, I think he would have come out and said, "Oh, this has been a fantastically successful operation. I, congratulate Israel on this. It's the way for peace."
Sultan, Arik, Hazar, thanks for joining me. We're out of time, but really appreciate your comments. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.